Good morning, guys. How are we all doing? Just making a video for you here today about an indicator I've been using the last sort of 4 to 6 weeks. We're going to be talking about the settings of the indicator, how we can use the settings to our advantage. There's different use cases for this indicator, but today I'm just going to cover the breaker blocks, order blocks of inefficiencies, and unfinished candles. And I'm also going to cover how I use it briefly, but I'm going to make a second video taking you through sort of back testing, live testing, how we can use it. But this one is just going to be about the settings more than anything. So I've just got a naked BTC chart here on the hour time frame. So we're just going to talk about the different inefficiencies that this indicator identifies. So we've got order blocks, breaker blocks, partial breaker blocks, unfinished candles, and order blocks of inefficiencies. So the current one that's selected is order blocks. So this is going to pick up all the order blocks in the current time frame I'm using. And why only the current time frame? Because the time frame selected here is current. As you can see, there are 6 different groups. 5 of these groups, 1 to 5, have selected data points for us already, and group 6 is the custom group. So we're going to talk about 1 to 5 as a whole, and then I'm going to talk about 6 as its own sort of entity, because that's the one that I use, and that's the one that probably will be most useful. So we have order blocks, breaker blocks, unfinished candles, and order blocks of inefficiencies. So if you just scroll through each individual block type, it's just going to pick up these data points in the time frame selected. So breaker block on the hour, if we go on 12 minute, it's going to pick up the breaker blocks in the 12 minute. It's the same for unfinished candles. So this is something that I would probably recommend when you first start using the indicator, just so it's a bit clearer, a bit easier on the eye. But once you start getting comfortable with how everything works, you can start scrolling yourself through different time frames. So as I said, you've got group 1 to 5. If we just scroll past here and just get to the groups, so you can see 1 to 5 on screen now, and group 6 is custom one, which we'll discuss shortly. So group 1 has these time frames. Group 2 has the hourly time frames. Group 3 so on, 4 so on, and 5 so on. So you have the ability to deselect and select whatever ones you'd like. So if I just select low time frame, you'll see that the data on the screen. So as I said, you want to get used to identifying the different inefficiencies probably yourself, just using the separate time frames. And then once you build your bigger picture of what you're trading, using the grouped ones will become a bit more easier. When I say that, I mean, say for instance, you were trading a retracement. You can see here that you're identifying quite a key area here, and you've got your order blocks with demand resting on your golden pockets. So once you've built your picture with what you're trading, using market structure and all your other important areas, you can start ignoring the noise. You don't worry about this, okay, this is what I'm interested in. Don't worry about this too much, this is where I'm looking, you see. So that's where using group data just becomes a lot more efficient. I don't have to scroll through 12,000 timeframes to get to what I want to get to. I can just group them and use it to my advantage. So that's the group 1, showing all your low time frame groups, which are selected data points here. So for instance, let's choose group 3. So this is going to show all the daily time frames, and obviously these are going to be much wider inefficiencies, because the data points are so much more bigger. So I've got a daily, I'll surely show you best. As you can see, again, it's quite overwhelming. There's data points for something like order blocks, but they transpire the whole way through. So if you have your selected groups, it's just going to select the same things for your breaker blocks and your unfinished candles. But for me, something like unfinished candles are just like a confluence. If I just go on a lower time frame, for instance, and I'll pick the lower time frame group. Say, for instance, you are in a distribution. So we are forming a distribution up here in a low time frame range, and you know that once your entry becomes apparent, you've got all these unfinished candles below. It's just a confluence. So instead of going on every single time frame and drawing unfinished candles, you can just select this data point and it's going to show you all the unfinished candles within your range, and it's going to act as a +1 confluence for your trade. That's how I like to trade unfinished candles anyway. Obviously, if you're trading unfinished candles on a big time frame, then it's going to be a point of interest for, okay, this is where the data should go at some point because it needs to fill this imbalance. That's also another way, of course, you can use unfinished candles. Don't know if it's going to show any. No, that's fine. Oh, was there one down there? There you go. So you can see that there's a few unfinished candles all the way down there, but it's just another way of using it. I tend to use it for confluence once I've got my range. It's not something that I'll use and act on in every matter. So that's covering the basic sort of settings. I don't tend to mess around with the order block settings and breaker block detection settings. I like to keep these on 50. And why is that so important? Because, say for instance, we're trading breaker blocks, you'll see that when a breaker block is identified, let's go low time frame. Low time frame. What's lower time frame? There we go. Once a breaker block has been identified, you can see that there is a midpoint, and that's what that setting of the 50% refers to, and that's what's going to validate that breaker block for me. So that's how I use that in my trading. So that's a very key feature, a new feature as well, that's been a blessing really. It makes it so much more time efficient than having to draw out a measurement. So a little bit more onto the different colours you see as well in front of the screen. So you can change these to whatever you fancy, whatever is easy on the eye for you. Order blocks, multiple order blocks, breaker blocks, partial breaker blocks, unfinished candles, and order blocks of inefficiencies. And if, for instance, you're not, for example, too worried about multiple breaker blocks or any data point, you can just zero them out, and then the data won't be shown on screen. That's something that I like to do if I'm trying to zone in and focus on something in particular. It just makes it a bit easier on the eye. So the last thing I really wanted to talk about in this video was the custom time frame setting. As I said, there's not really too much I like to mess around with in these different subheadings. I just like to let these cook, but if that's something that you want to go out and test, then you may find some alpha in there. I'm not going to speak about Bojans today. I'll speak about that in another video. Same with these visual settings. I haven't really played around with these a great deal. I like to keep this as basic as I can because it is very advanced. You can really strip the different settings apart and use it to your advantage. But as I say, today, next I want to talk about the custom area. So group 6, and this was the one that I didn't show previously. So group 6 is where you can type in your own timeframes that you want the data to find for you. So at the moment, the data selected has every 3 minutes after the hour, so an hour and 3 minutes, 2 hours and 3 minutes, etc., etc. But what I like to use this for is the specific data points that I'm trying to identify with the current data that I'm looking at. So at the moment, I'm doing a lot of low time frame scalping, using breaker blocks and order blocks. So I like to use more or less timeframes from a minute to 20 really. And this will help me identify groups of data that may be of importance to my current setup really. So as I said before, it can be a little bit overwhelming with the amount of boxes that are on the screen, but like I say, once you've built your context in your bigger picture and you know what you're looking for, it's not going to be a problem, and it's just going to make everything a lot more simpler, because you can just start identifying certain areas of the market which have multiple POI zones. And if you get a POI zone that's also backed by an order block, backed by fibs, this sort of stuff, it's going to become apparent where you should be looking. There's a lot on screen, yes, but you can just ignore the noise and you can focus on what you want to focus on that aligns with your system, that aligns with your bias, or where you want to wait for the market to go really. So this is what I've been using. This is the best use case for me. Along with that, again, it's going to become extremely overwhelming, but if you use order blocks, you're going to find hundreds and hundreds of blocks within a given price point. There you go. But again, if you're using fibs or whatever in your system, and you know that certain fibs align with data points, then it's going to be a lot easier just to ignore the noise. If we just take this bottom here, because I can already see that these are probably going to align a bit better from this point of view. There you go. Okay, so you can start ignoring the noise, and if any of these points fall within said order blocks, then that's when it's going to be of use to yourself. So yeah, I think that's more or less everything in a nutshell. I suppose briefly I can touch on the replay mode section, because this is quite important when you're in replay mode. So let me just hide that for now, and let me just start a new, let me just go over here somewhere, and take that off scale so it just stays here. That's another thing as well, guys. If when you're loading the indicator up, just take it off scale, because then you won't see when it started it done something like that and it was just a mess. But if you just take it off scale, it will just keep the area that you're currently looking at. So something that is important when you're in replay mode is the amount of bars that the data is scanning, and these two little settings down here in the advanced section. So this statistic setting is going to provide you with a little box in this top right hand corner, and this is basically going to let you know if the indicator is working. Sometimes when you're backtesting, because there's so much data that you're going back, if you're going back from a year ago and you're trying to backtest, obviously the code's got to pick up so much data, it's going to cause like little breaks that I've noticed. So if you bring up this statistics box, that's basically your confirmation, right, this is working, let me start my testing. But as well as that, there is also a replay mode selection, which is going to enhance your TradingView replay mode ability. So you can see here, I'll just leave that on screen for you for a sec to read, so you can see what that is calculating and how it works. That's a nice little addition. I really like this. That's great. But with that, obviously, as you said, you can manipulate with the amount of bars, so you can change this to as many as you want really. You can go up and it's just going to select more data points. So it's at 190 at the moment. It's probably going to double it, I imagine. It's still loading. There you go. It's added some more. So you can see as that changes, it's going to change the amount of data points that you're analysing. But that is a very handy tool in there, and obviously you can go a bit lower, and that's going to refine the amount of data points that you're looking at. So yeah, definitely an important feature in the indicator, and one that I certainly use when I'm in replay mode. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in the second video. In the second one, as I said, we'll just go through a bit of back testing, a bit of live testing, how you can use the indicator, and how we can maybe start reducing the amount of noise on screen, and how you can use the indicator to your advantage when trading, guys. So thanks for listening. I hope you gained some value with the settings here, and I'll see you in the next one.